Hello folks, this is Ruth Meed again here, and I am going to be spending more time with you actually looking at the table and what I'm going to do here rather than you looking at me again, because a lot of the things that we do are going to be hands-on, minds-on, or I'm going to try to show you different things that you can do with your students. So again, who am I? I am an educator. I have nearly 30 years of experience working with kids. I taught in public schools, I taught in private schools, I taught as a university professor of special ed from a Christian perspective, and so my goal is to give you ideas from a Christian perspective of how to work with your kids with different things. So I had a parent ask me to give some ideas about how to work with a child who struggles with handwriting or dysgraphia, and this could go into several different things. There's some bleeds as far as the ways that you can apply this. So you can also think about dyslexia, so kids who flip their letters around. You've got this book here that I want to tell you about. It's called The Gift of Dyslexia by Ronald Davis, and he actually had dyslexia as a child, so there's lots of ideas in this book as well that you could possibly reference. But I just want to show you some ideas that you can use to work with your kids if they're struggling with handwriting skills or making their letters or flipping their letters around. These will all apply with what I'm going to show you here. So some of the materials that you'll need if you want to do this, you're going to need a surface that can get wet. So I've got a surface here that can get wet, and I've gotten some of these papers and I've laminated them. So just sheets of white paper, and I laminated both sides so I can use them more than once and I can get them wet, or I can use them for several different things. Modeling clay. I just went to Walmart and got this Cheapo Depot modeling clay. It was less than $5, and there's several packs in here. I didn't open them all up for right now for what I'm going to do. Shaving gel or mousse. I've got some gel here. Interestingly enough, as I squirted it on, it slowly but surely actually makes it puffy, or I was expecting it to do more like the mousse, and I'll show you with the mousse in just a minute here what I'm going to do with that one. Or you can use toothpaste, so I've got some toothpaste here that you can possibly use, and then or some soft styling gels, those kinds of things. And then some lotions. I've got a lotion that I use. Now, I'm mentioning these lotions because sometimes you're working with kids who have sensory issues or tactile issues, and they can, they might react to certain things. So you might need to pick a different kind of lotion or something for them so that they don't react too much. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about some concepts from the Bible as to why we would do these kinds of things. So the first thing, again, I'm going to reference that I referenced in my introductory video is 1 John 1 through 4. The things that we were from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled of the word of life. For the life was manifested, and we have seen it, and bear witness, and show you eternal life, which was from the Father, and which is manifested or shown to us. That which we have seen and heard we declare to you, that our fellowship might be with the Father and with His Son Jesus Christ. And these things we write unto you, that your joy might be full. So when you start to declare things, when you're telling other people about them, when you write about them, when other people read them, it brings joy. Certainly eternal joy when you're talking about the things of the Lord, but just in everyday things. When we read things that are blessings to us, they bring us joy. So lots of, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, hands-on, touching, moving, talking, writing. That's the verses here. So I got 5 little points here I want you to remember, 4 that are really important. When you start to do work with somebody who's got letter issues or writing issues, do a little mini pre-test if you haven't already done. Get them just to take a sheet of paper and draw out all of their letters and see how they do with that. And again, it's going to depend on your age and developmental ability level, what you're expecting to see from them. But you're going to focus on the ones that they do well, and you're going to point out and say, hey, you've done this one really good, you've done this one really good, and okay, here's some that are weak, so let's start working on those. So I found a neat verse in the Bible, Psalm 11:4, where it says that God watches carefully to see what we do. He tests us, so He pre-tests us to see what we will do. And 2 Chronicles 32:31, God left Hezekiah alone to see what was really in his heart. So testing and trying to find out what's going on with a student is legitimate. So point 1 is do a mini pre-test. We'll review that. Now point 2, go from easy to more difficult to implement. And at the point where it starts working for them to remember a particular letter, you can stop using that method, or you can reinforce it with even more fun things that I'm going to show you going forward. again, the biblical principle here, if you think about Hebrews 5, we're working from milk to meat. So developmentally trying to help them understand at levels that they can understand. Then a third thing you want to, so first one was do the mini pretest, figure out where they're really weak, and show them where they're strong. Point those things out. Then go from easy to more difficult as you're implementing. Then C, talk about and make associations with live objects as you do this. So make it an I Spy game. So for instance, when I'm talking about the letter C, if I wanted to do C, I would say, here's a cup. And if you look right here on the handle of the cup, that's the shape of a letter C. So that makes a solid association with them. And farther on here, when I do some more with the modeling clay, I'm going to show you how you'll do that with another more association with that. Okay. Then, so we've got do the mini pretest, go from easy to more difficult, talk about, make associations with live objects, do an I Spy game so they can see different objects that actually have letter shapes on them, and then focus on growth, not perfection. The journey of 1,000 miles is taken one step at a time. Luke 2:52, Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. So we grow a little bit at a time. And 2 Corinthians 15:58 that says, be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. You're just going to continually keep working, and as you do, you grow. So a little side hint that I might need to give you along the way, if you've got munchkins who really struggle, is you might want to think about getting them big pencils. So you got, this is a pretty big pencil that I've got here. It's actually also very long. The fun of it is it's a nice long pencil, but when you've got a kid who really struggles, then you can see if I put it up to the thing, how thick that is. It's almost the thickness of my fingers. So, or even like, I didn't grab one, I meant to grab one, but you know, the thickness of your markers. So you can actually use your write-on wipe-off markers. I should have grabbed one of those while I was doing this. So again, we're going to go from easy to more difficult with working with trying to help them figure out what the shapes of the letters are like. So you're going to do, if they're struggling with the fine motor skills, then you can do with, it's okay to work with gross motor skills first. So your gross motor skills are coming from up on your arm, whereas your fine motor skills have to do with your fingers. And sometimes kids really need help with those gross motor skills first before they can get to the fine motor. So I've got some fun shave gel that I got at the store here, and it was kind of interesting what it did, but it's not necessarily doing exactly what I wanted it to, but I got this fun feeling in my hands here, and because I've got the fun feeling, I can make a letter. So the letter I'm going to kind of focus on for most of these is the letter B. So if we're talking about B, we're going to talk about B, and they're going to draw. You're just going to get them to draw down through it, and they're going to have the fun of actually making that letter B. So that's kind of fun. And you can do that again with the toothpaste, you can do that with the gel, you can do that with the mousse. Now, if they get it just, and they're having fun with it just that way, and you don't necessarily have to do a whole lot of these other things, but you can do them for fun. But just even that little task right there with your shave gel, or M's another one. So you got to go down, then down again, and down again, and down again to make your M. Or if you're wanting to make them do the manuscript version, you would have them go down, then back up, then down, then back up with a little twirly. And they're doing, again, this is a gross motor skill that they're working with. It's not a fine motor skill, but they can do that. Now, the other thing that I suggested that you get is some sandpaper. If you've got kids that this is not working and they're still struggling to get their letters, you can get sandpaper, and this actually says on it, let me put this, wet or dry. So you get wet or dry, and then you can get this stuff wet. So I can take this over and just put it right on to this kind of sandpaper. And what's happening is when they go to write on this, they're actually getting feedback under their fingers with the roughness of the sandpaper. So you can pick the different kind of grips that you want to do with the sandpaper. The one that I've got right now is pretty fine. This was 800. Or you can use regular sandpaper as well. The only problem with using the regular sandpaper is it tends to wear out a little bit more quickly than the wet, dry sandpaper. So if you have a kid and just that light bit of sandpaper feel works for them, then they can use that going down to make our B and going around to make our B. Or you can use a thicker, heavier type of sandpaper if they need even more of that feedback in their fingers. Okay, I'm going to rinse my hands off real quick and come right back. So if they get the concepts and they're doing good with that, and they can actually start taking that and moving it over to a piece of paper and copying 3 or 4 letters, and they've got them at that point with the B, then great. If they're still struggling, then you start to do some other games with them. So I'm using B as my example, and you can get creative, and or there's more ideas in this Gift of Dyslexia book for you. So another one that is really helpful is to go ahead and get them actually working with modeling clay. So there's the clay that I've got going on here, and I took some time ahead of time to actually build myself a little bat and a little ball. And you would teach your students that the bat comes before the ball in baseball. So that makes an association with the idea of a bat hitting a ball. It has to go this way, and so the line down has to come first before the round part. Now here's something that's really important with this. Do not teach the letters B and D on the same day. Matter of fact, don't even teach them like a week apart from each other. Work with just B for at least a week. Every day they're visiting it. They do some fun stuff, activities with B. Even, 5, 10, 15 minutes with the letter B every day, and then they write it maybe 5 times. Don't make them write it a ton of times, because you can really frustrate them if they're really struggling with this. So there is a point to practice, but over practice can become frustrating. But you would never teach a B at the same time as you would teach a D. So bat comes before the ball in baseball. So that's an idea. You make the modeling clay, get them to think that way through. And or, like if they're working with the letter C and they're turning the letter C around, I'll see if I can do this quick enough. So then I do my little modeling clay, and I come to my cup, and I actually talk about the cup, and then I get them to make the modeling clay, and they wrap it around the cup. So they're actually feeling and seeing that C as they do it. And then once they've gotten good at doing this, then they can come back and actually do it on the sandpaper possibly again, or on a real piece of paper with your big pencil. So a big piece of paper. Now let's talk about grip for just a second. You can do grip where, you've got a big enough pencil that it works for them. But if they're still struggling, you can go out and buy grips, but I'm going to tell you, it's just as cheap if you already got your modeling clay there to wrap your modeling clay around there, and it gives them a bigger thing to put their fingers on, and then you can show them. Now you may have kids who actually still can't do this, where they actually can't put their thumbs like this. So if they're still doing this number, but they're able to still make their letters, let them do that for a while, because their fine motors are not developed enough. You can get them to try to go back to this and keep doing with the stuff in the shaving cream and those kind of things. But use your modeling clay if you need a pencil grip for them this way. And if they're still like this, it's okay for a bit. If they can actually make their letters this way, it'll be okay for them to do it that way. The goal is to make legible writing right now. It's not to torture a child with their fine motor skills. So it's, this develops some of the fine motor skills, and it's fun. They enjoy doing this, so it helps them develop those fine motor skills. But until they get them, then it's okay for them to do it a little bit this way. This is not a hill to die on, that they hold their pencil this way if they're actually able to make decent letters, because they've still got the gross motor skills that they can do. Now you can do what they call hand over hand, where you put your hand on theirs and help them to create the B. And again, do them real big to start with before you bring them down to smaller sizes. Okay. So if you use the shaving cream, that's the softest. Then you can use toothpaste. Toothpaste has a little bit more of a resistance to it if you use toothpaste, so they're going to feel that a little bit more. And then the sandpaper, you've got light sandpapers, or you can get really rough sandpapers. I had some examples of that here too. The rough kinds of sandpaper. This is like 100 grit. But if you're using the bigger sandpapers, or the rougher sandpapers, then be careful how much you do that, because you don't want them wearing out their fingers. So watch for that. They're just going to practice a little bit. They're not going to do that a lot, so be careful for that. All right, let me peek at my notes again for a second. So some common letters that are flipped, and I can go ahead, I will attach this at the bottom if you want to have my little cheat sheet that I wrote up with the different ideas and thoughts on it. And you'll have access to be able to go ahead and just download this. It'll be free to you. Some common letters that are always flipped are B and D, M and W, A, S, and E can be flipped. P and Q, always teach them to put the tail on a Q when they do the Q. N and U, those are some ones, and then common letters that are hard. A, B, D, E, G, K, M, N, P, Q, and sometimes it's because their hands still are not developed enough and they can't get that circular motion going around. So after they've done this for 2 or 3 days, then do a little mini post-test and see how much growth they've got. And keep the pre-test so that you can bring them back to it and show them and say, look, see how much you've improved. So it gives them the feeling that, oh, they were able to do something, they got farther along, they were able to improve. So that's all for today. I want to try to keep these fairly short. But if you like what I'm doing and you know others who need this or possibly some of the other ideas that I have, then like and subscribe down below. Share, comment on the video, tell me other things you'd like me to talk about, and then, share it on your pages to tell other people about it. And I wish you a blessed day in the Lord.